Welcome back to Old School Sports and our Out of the Park Baseball 24 playthrough of our expansion Buffalo Wings. And they are our undefeated Buffalo Wings, 1-0 to begin this 2026 season. We did something very different that I've never done on the channel before and only done 2 times previously in real life. And we played out a game in OOTP for the debut of Buffalo in the major leagues. Thanks to those of you, including Jay Bird and Stanley Rosella, who have given me some tips on how to do better if I play through a game live, or not really live, but on video once again. If I do it again, hopefully I'll be a little better at it than I was this past time. Not something that I'm planning on doing imminently, but it was more enjoyable than I thought it would be, so hopefully it's something that I'll do again. But this is going to be a much more traditional episode for those of you who have watched the channel in the past. Probably will get 2 or 3 months of action out of the way in this episode, get the team to the midway point of the season, close to the All-Star break, hopefully, and see if our Wings can remain a somewhat productive team. The projections and some good comments explained how the projections are actually done and how inaccurate they can be, and I've certainly experienced that over the years with teams that have often well outperformed pretty low expectations. I do think that this year we may be a team that underperforms relatively high expectations, as we were expected to go 81-81. I just don't see this being a 500 team. And I still stand by my original assessment that my big goal with this team is to avoid 100 losses. If we can avoid 100 losses, I will be, I don't want to say pleased, but I will be satisfied with how the season goes if we can avoid 100 losses, in conjunction with getting our young players lots of playing time. And some of those young players, most notably Kevin Made, the shortstop that we picked up in a trade with Detroit, had a great start to his career with the Buffalo Wings yesterday. And Jace Barofin got his first hit, drove in 2 runs, our first-round draft pick in 2023, the first draft pick in the history of the Buffalo franchise. Made his major league debut in Buffalo's first game, and really interested in seeing what he can do over the course of the season as well. And before I dip into the episode, one other thing that's come up recently in the comments that I wanted to mention. A few episodes back, I went through all the settings that we were using, or that I am using. I don't think I mentioned that I had turned two-way players off, which I did do for this series as well. There's so few two-way players, and in my experience with OOTP, I just don't think that they are valued highly enough. I've just seen Ohtani so many times sign for ridiculously small contracts. And I also, as some of you who have watched episodes in series in the past, the one time when I was playing in the majors with an actual two-way player is the only time that I have ever had an OOTP league that got completely corrupted and was unable to be saved. Probably has nothing to do with the fact that I had a two-way player, but that has, I don't want to say scarred me for life, but it's scarred me for at least a year and a half at this point. So I wanted to let people know. I think that's the only significant setting that I may have missed when I was talking through the changes that I made. And some of you may have even seen that on the screen if you have eagle eyes that are better than my eyes at this point in my life. And we've simmed ahead a little over a week. The Wings are sitting with a 4-4 record, already 2.5 games behind, 5th place in the 8-team National League East. 500 is perfectly fine for a team with the 28th biggest budget in baseball, as far as I'm concerned. We do have our first couple of injuries, though. Center fielder Jose Siri back tightness was going to impact him 1 to 2 weeks. It impacts his hitting, his throwing, and his running. So I think just out of an abundance of caution, we are going to put him on the IL. Hasn't been hitting much at all, just 3 for 21. We weren't expecting him to hit much. He's in the lineup and on our team because of his glove, but even with the good glove, his bat's been so bad that his WAR is slightly negative this year. So we'll give somebody else a chance in center field for a while. And then a more significant injury to Mike Burrows. You may remember he was the winning pitcher in the first game in Buffalo history. He's out for 4 to 5 weeks with a herniated disc in his back. So he has been pretty good so far. 5 strikeouts in 3 2/3 innings. Still has not allowed a run. But we will not have him back until late May, most likely. And we've made our decisions on the players we're going to bring up. We're bringing up Cam Wynn from Albany. He was our closer there. Did have 3 saves, but also allowed 4 runs in 3 2/3 innings, but has some of the best stuff in our whole organization. So we're going to get a look at what Wynn, who was an expansion draft pick for us, can do at the major league level. And we've also decided to bring up Luis Durango, 23-year-old center fielder, another guy that we picked in the expansion draft, just turned 23 years old. He was raking, hitting .323 in an admittedly very small sample size, just 31 at-bats in Albany. He's a competent defensive center fielder, but he does potentially have a better bat for us than we're used to with Jose Siri. So it's conceivable that he could, maybe lay claim to the starting spot if he really hits well over the next couple of weeks while Siri's out with that back tightness. And we've made it almost to the end of April. And we're hanging in there. We're respectable. We're 11-12. Jose Siri ready to come back and play center field for us. Luis Durango was certainly respectable, 12 for 48, hit .250 for us, about a replacement level performance overall. But we will send him down to AAA to get a little more seasoning. Didn't make it seem like he has taken that job away from Jose Siri at this point, so would rather that he get regular playing action down in AAA with Siri taking over again as our starting center fielder. And now we'll get a better chance to see what Siri's able to do, hopefully with a larger sample size than the few games he had before he got hurt. And we lost our last game in the month of May to Montreal, 1-0 yesterday. So we stand with an 11-13 record after our first month in Major League Baseball. Taking a look at the NL East standings, we're 6 games behind the mighty Braves, but we are ahead of both the Expos and the Marlins in the standings. So although we've lost 3 in a row to fall under 500, still certainly a respectable and representative first month of action from Buffalo. Sean Sullivan has been brilliant for us, the rookie pitcher, second-round draft pick of ours out of Wake Forest in 2024. Had a nice 12-6 record with a 3.74 ERA in AAA for us last year. And he made his debut, obviously, in the major leagues this year. 2-1 record with a league best, as we talked about, 1.09 ERA over 24 2/3 innings pitched. So he's only going about 5 innings a start, but he's been giving us a excellent 5 innings a start. So interested in seeing what he can do the rest of the way. Bryce Miller actually has 8 saves for us, which is third in the National League. He's pitched in 8 games, saved all of the games he's pitched in, 10 strikeouts, 2 walks, and 4 hits allowed over 8 innings pitched. 154 batting average against, has not allowed a run. So he has done a really nice job for us as a closer thus far also. And taking a look at our team statistics, we're one game above Pythagorean expectations. That's probably because of that opening day game that I managed and won for us with my brilliant strategery and decision making. Taking a look at the batting stats, kind of middle to lower end of the pack in most batting categories. Pitching categories, we kind of thought it would be a weakness, and it certainly has been in the bottom third of the league in most categories. And our defense also hasn't been great either. So we expected there would be some ups and downs, and probably more downs than ups as an expansion franchise. And thus far, as I said, it's going fine. Didn't have high expectations, and we're meeting them. And we've made it to the end of May, June 1st now, and you can see the Wings are still tied for 5th in the division with the Phillies, but 2-8 over our last 10, 11 games out at this point, and still are ahead of both the Marlins and the Expos, but they're pretty close to us. The Marlins only a half a game behind us at this point. Things are also starting to normalize a bit as far as the leaderboard. Tommy Edman, the second baseman, did have a 16-game hitting streak for us, even though he's only hitting .217 on the year. But other than that, we don't have anyone else on the leaderboards at this point. At the end of June, we'll check in on the statistics of all of the players on our team once we've got just about half a season. Taking a look at the team stats, though, we're still one game better than Pythagorean expectations, and the hitting is generally kind of middle of the pack for most categories. Our batting average is actually 5th in the National League, but we're 9th, 10th, 12th, 4th, 7th, 9th, 11th. Definitely not great. We're 14th in the league in steals. Definitely could be more aggressive there. We are 1st in the National League in base running. The pitching, not surprisingly, has been bad. I'd say the only surprise in the pitching is that our bullpen ERA ranking 13th is the same as our starters ERA. Felt that our bullpen was potentially a strength of this team heading into the season, and hasn't proven to be that in terms of statistics. It could be because those guys are being forced to pitch a lot of innings because we've got a pretty mediocre to bad starting rotation, to be completely honest. But the pitching is definitely the issue. Positively, as I mentioned, even though we've got one of the lower budgets in baseball, we're going to have a lot of money to spend next off season unless our budget gets cut. And even if our budget does get cut, we'll still have a fair amount of money to spend, because we really don't have too many long-term commitments. It's really just all about some arbitration-eligible players who are going to start potentially making a little more next year. And then we've got that team option on Tommy Edman, who we basically just picked up because we had money to spend this year, and he has not been as big a positive impact on the team as we would have hoped. Fan loyalty and fan interest both hanging in there pretty well so far, so there's been a lot of enthusiasm for the Wings in this first Major League season of theirs. Interestingly, the Nashville Stars are doing about the same as we are, 21-29, .420 winning percentage, 13 games out. So the Wings and the Stars are off to pretty similar starts in Major League Baseball here in the 2026 expansion season. And our Wings have been playing somewhat better to begin the month of June. Took 2 out of 3 at Baltimore, and then we took 2 out of 3 back home against Toronto. Also, finally won some hardware for the Wings. The young shortstop Kevin Made, NL Player of the Week. He's having a nice season for us offensively. 276 average, 7 homers, and 192 at-bats. 125 OPS plus, 128 WRC plus, and a 2.2 WAR. So pretty productive. He is a player who realistically may not be our shortstop forever. Could definitely see him ending up at third base or second base, depending on who we bring into the organization. But right now, he's the best defensive shortstop with a major league caliber bat that we have in our system. and he's doing really well for us so far. Taking a quick look at the fielding stats, zone rating and defensive efficiency at shortstop both indicate that he's doing a more than competent job out there. Range and fielding percentage, not incredible, but certainly seems to be holding his own, at least for us at this point. We'll see if hopefully the team can continue performing well through this month of June. As we've talked about in previous episodes, I also gave the Wings and the Stars the first 2 picks in this upcoming draft, which obviously is good news. But when we look at this draft in 2026, and I know that this is something I've experienced anecdotally, and I know several of you have commented that you've seen the same thing, that although the 23, 24, and 25 drafts in OOTP tend to be overwhelming, the 2026 draft, things turn around. And certainly the case this year. You look at the insane number of 5-star prospects that are out there, and a lot of 4.5, 4, 3.5 star prospects. We're just looking at batters now. Among pitchers, there's also definitely some pretty high potential players. So obviously we will have our choice among any of them, but this is the type of draft where if we were picking, 10th or 12th or 20th or 22nd, which is kind of where we had the Wings and the Stars picking in the draft the past 3 years, this is one draft where it's probably not going to cost us so much if we were in one of those lower positions, simply because this draft seems to be incredibly stacked at this point. But we will get our pick of the litter and obviously spend a lot of time in our next episode digging in deep into who these prospects are and our decision making about who we want to pick. And the month of June is going respectively for the Wings. Got the record to 29 and 34, 9 games out in the East. I don't think we are a legitimate playoff contender, but I'll just show you where we are in the wild card standings, and you can see we're 6 games out of a wild card, and we'd have a lot of teams to climb over to get back in. So I'm not even thinking about the wild card, but I know some of you may be wondering where we are in the standings. So hopefully that answered the question for anyone who had it. We did just have another injury, not all that significant. You'll remember that we signed Jose Abreu to a 1-year deal when we had money to spend, thinking it would give us a representative major league bat at first base. He's actually been pretty disappointing for us, hitting just .219 with only 6 home runs and 228 at-bats. Do like the captain personality, but has been a well below average player offensively and below replacement level in terms of his WAR with his mediocre defense. So he's got some back stiffness, going to impact him for 1 to 2 weeks. It has an impact on his hitting, an impact on his running, and given that he's really not part of the future for us, we are going to put him on the IL and bring up someone from AAA, and also shift the roster around a bit to give some players some extra playing time. Nolan Jones, although he's hitting just $179 for us and 78 at-bats, might be a logical guy to get some degree of extra playing time with that injury to Abreu. And we made a very uninteresting move. We brought Colton Wong up from the AAA Albany team, hitting just .234 there as a part-time starter for us. As I said, we're going to go with Nolan Jones as our starting first baseman against right-handed pitching, and give Nick York the opportunity against lefties, which lets us get some playing time for Jacob Amaya as well. So there were no obvious rookies or prospects to bring up out of AAA that we were going to be getting regular playing time to, so figured it made sense to bring up the 35-year-old veteran to sit on the bench and be an occasional pinch hitter or substitute when somebody needs a day off. And although we're not even at the midway point of the season, you can see we've been selling out the majority of our games. As I talked about earlier, fan interest has been great. So we're actually going to bump ticket prices up just a tad to $30 to hopefully generate a little more revenue from our rabid fan base here in Buffalo, New York. And Abreu is back from his injury, so we sent Colton Wong down, but we're actually going to keep playing Nolan Jones at first base against right-handed pitching. He's got the batting average up to 200. Not that that's incredibly impressive, but he's a 28-year-old. It's conceivable that he's going to be on our team next year. We're going to keep Abreu in the starting lineup against left-handed pitching, given that he's a right-handed bat. But as we talked about, he hasn't been incredibly productive, and he's going to be 40 years old before next season starts. So I think it's pretty unlikely that he will be back with the Buffalo organization next year. So might as well give Jones more time to play and try to figure out whether he's someone that, while we're probably not necessarily going to be building around him, whether he's someone who may have a role to play on our roster over the next few seasons as we hopefully build up the Wings. We're at 34 and 37 right now, so we've been creeping closer and closer to 500 over the month of June. Got about a week left before the calendar flips to July. Hopefully we can keep that good month of June going. Would be nice to have a winning record in one of these months, one of the first 3 months of the season. And obviously, if it's going to be something that occurred, June is the only chance we have at a winning record, since we had losing records in both April and especially our horrible May. And as the calendar turns to July 1st, we've got some bad news and some good news. The bad news is the Wings have lost 4 in a row, so we did not finish the month of June as strong as we would have hoped. That said, we're alone in 5th place in the NL East now, 36 and 42, 12 games back. Still ahead of the Expos, the Marlins, and the last place Phillies. Wild card race, we are 7.5 out, and again, several teams that we would need to jump over to get into wild card contention. So we're not going to the playoffs this year. We weren't expecting to go to the playoffs this year, but clearly it hasn't been a great season, but it hasn't been horrible either. But outside of the 4 straight losses, do have some decent move. We did some decent news. We did end up with our first winning record of the year, 14 and 12 in June. So we were 14 and 8 before that 4-game losing streak to finish the month. So playing a little better here in the month of June, which is nice. Our 36 and 42 record, right in line with Pythagorean expectations. We do have a winning record at home at Solon Field, losing record on the road. We're still kind of middle of the pack to upper middle of the pack, honestly, in a lot of the offensive categories, which is fairly positive. The pitching continues to be brutal, though. We're the bottom third of the league in every pitching category except for strikeouts, where we are somehow 6th, probably because we're using a lot of relievers who, can be a little specialized and throw as hard as they need to for an inning or a fraction of an inning or a couple of innings out of relief. Defensive efficiency pretty mediocre, but zone rating we're good. So the statistical information is certainly mixed. Batting definitely better than pitching here midway through the season, or closing in on midway through the season, more accurately, 78 games in. And Jace Barofin, the former first-round draft pick, was just named National League Rookie of the Month. So I think maybe he's got a chance at being Rookie of the Year at this point. I haven't looked to see how other rookies are doing, but close to midway through his first season in the majors, hitting .268, 22 doubles, 11 home runs, 118 for both his OPS plus and his WRC plus, only a 1.5 WAR, so he hasn't been incredibly productive. 790 OPS, not great, but certainly an indication that he can be a pretty useful bat for these Buffalo Wings, hopefully for many years to come. And unfortunately, the Wings poor play has continued through the first 5 games in July. 1-4 on the month. Lost a game to the A's. And then, although we took the first game at home against Washington, we then lost 3 in a row. So the record has slipped to 37-46, tied for 5th place, but much closer to the basement than we are to first place. 2-8 over our last 10, 14 games behind. And in the wild card, we are now 9.5 back, still with a lot of teams that we would need to jump over to get to a potential playoff spot. So it's been a very mediocre to rough season on the field for the Wings. You know, that said, a winning percentage in the mid-400s will definitely keep us from losing 100 games, which was our primary goal. And our secondary goal now is going to be to pick someone really interesting in the first-year player draft. So although we haven't gotten the official mid-season review from ownership yet, I do have 3 things that we want to do before we finish off this episode. We're going to take a look at the top 100 prospects in baseball. We're going to take a look at how our players here at the major league level are actually performing this season. And then last but not least, we're going to give a quick preview of some of the top players available in the draft. If you've got opinions on where we should go with that number 1 pick, would certainly love to hear them. So first, the top 100 prospects. Catcher Andres Medina, guy who we picked up as an international free agent signing in 2024, still listed as the number 5 prospect in the game. Still has not been impressive in rookie ball, hitting just a $173 this year in his first 75 at-bats in rookie ball. So a lot of work for him to become what we think he can be. But if he's able to get that contact and that home run power improved with that catcher ability, still has potential to be a pretty productive player. He's obviously very unhappy with the team record, but surprisingly, he's not unhappy with his performance. I don't know if I love hearing that from him. And then another guy that viewers have asked me to check in on is Derek Boot, the guy that we missed out on in 2025 international free agent signings when we maybe got a little too creative with trying to swing for a home run, and instead, I don't want to say that we struck out, but we maybe ended up with a bloop single by the fact that we missed out on Boot by making offers to a couple of decent starting pitching prospects for under their asking price that ended up being accepted, which kept us from being able to pay enough for Boot, who was our primary target. So he ended up going to the Cubs organization. You can see the batting profile, if he completely develops, is still pretty interesting. Not incredible defensively, certainly. He is 6'1", but looking, quite honestly, like a first baseman, most likely. You love that really good arm at third base, but the range and the error ratings are so far below average that I don't think you'd want to play him there. Could definitely play him in right or left field, though, so he's got some potential. He's made his debut in rookie ball this year at the age of 19, and he's in just a $118 with 27 strikeouts and 51 at-bats. So obviously has a long way to go to fulfill his high potential. I'm actually surprised that our scouting accuracy on him is low at this point, too. That's kind of interesting to see. But still think that he has got pretty good potential, and we'll keep monitoring how he develops over the years, and hopefully, more importantly, how Andres Medina develops over the years. Quick look just at our player development overall, minor league system, still ranking 10th out of 32, which is where we were the last time we checked in. Marte, who we got as an international free agent signing this past year, still viewed as the number 21 prospect in baseball, still at our international complex. He's not going to turn 18 until November. So, turning to how our players have performed on the field about midway through this debut season for the Buffalo Wings, the starting rotation, as we've talked about, has not been good. Tylor Megill, who's our top starter, does have 9 wins in 18 games pitched, but the 5.34 ERA certainly not impressive. We do have him under a pretty reasonable contract for the next few years. As I've talked about in the past, our hope is we can move him down towards being a 4th or 5th starter as we add some more talent to the team. Martin Perez, who was our opening day starter, 5-10, 5.32 ERA, age 35. This will probably be his only season with us. He has been asking for an extension. I don't see that happening. He's only looking for a little less than $2 million a year, but still probably not a direction we're going to go with someone his age. Misael Tamares, 4-6 with a 4.10 ERA. Doesn't have the best stamina in the world, so he's only averaging about 4.5 innings a start. But he's still been okay. Can't complain about the performance. Only 26 years old. Certainly somebody who could be a back of the rotation starter, or on a better team, a long reliever out of the bullpen down the line. Tanner Houck has been brutal. We brought him on board, and we've got him for next year also at $1.4 million. 1-7 record, 6.84 ERA, 162 WHIP. Almost a full win below replacement level. So he has not been good as a allegedly experienced pitcher for us. The highlight of the starting rotation is obviously the rookie Sean Sullivan, the lefty, who is 6-5 with a 3.09 ERA over 84 1/3 innings pitched. 117 WHIP, WAR of almost 1. His SIERA is a little elevated at 427, ERA plus 132, FIP minus 104. So certainly some mixed results from him. The BABIP of 251 you would think is going to probably go higher eventually. So he may be overperforming a bit at this point. But certainly has the profile of someone who hopefully at the very least can be a solid 3rd or 4th starter for Buffalo for several years to come. The bullpen, more of a mixed batch of performances, some really good, some really bad. Bryce Miller, the 27-year closer, has been pretty good. 1-3 record, but 19 saves, striking out more than a batter per inning for us. 251 SIERA on the season. Javier Atencio and Mike Baumann, both been pretty solid as setup men for us. Colby White and Max Meyer as our middle relievers have not put up great numbers, that's for sure, with a 5.67 ERA and a 6.13 ERA. The lefty Brandon Williamson, the 28-year-old, also a pretty ugly 5.76 ERA, allowing more than a hit an inning and walking more than a batter every 2 innings. That's not really a recipe for success. Mike Burrows has been fantastic. He, of course, if you remember, was the guy who won the first game in Buffalo history. 3-0 on the year, 45 strikeouts over 37 2/3 innings, 165 batting average against. So he has been excellent at 26 years old, probably will be back next year. And then Raylan Perez has also been pretty good out of the bullpen, 3.06 ERA and 42 strikeouts over 32 1/3 innings pitched. So some guys in the bullpen look like they could be productive members of our team for hopefully many seasons to come. And we've also got mixed results from our offensive players. Overall, the offense has been better than the pitching staff. Backup catcher Israel Pineda not doing well, hitting just a $169 with 1 home run and 65 at-bats. But Christian Vasquez, who we signed to that minor league contract with major league options, his obviously brings a lot to the table in terms of a great personality, his captain personality class and his very good defensive ratings. And he's hitting 274 with us. Not a ton of power, just 3 homers and 230 at-bats. But if he can be a 274 hitter, he is a pretty productive player. He's only signed to the 1-year deal, and he's looking for a 5-year extension at about $9 million a year, given that he's going to be 36 by next month. Probably not a direction we want to go. We already talked about Jose Abreu. He does have the average up to 235 now with 7 homers and 243 at-bats. That said, similar to Vasquez, he's probably going to be one and done with the Wings. Jacob Amaya, 27-year-old second baseman, hitting just $180 and 50 at-bats as a utility infielder. His future with the team certainly uncertain. Tommy Edman, we've got an option on him next year. He has kind of turned things up recently, got the batting average up to 281, 12 doubles and 8 home runs, even 3 triples. So 110 OPS plus, 110 WRC plus, and a 2.3 WAR on the season. Given his excellent glove, he is a guy who we conceivably may want to keep around. We did front load that contract that we signed him to late in spring training. So we've got a team option at a not horrible number next year, and we're probably going to have tons of money to spend, so he's certainly in the mix to come back. Nick York, the 24-year-old utility infielder, hitting 277 over 101 at-bats, primarily playing against left-handed pitching. I like the bat for a utility infielder. The issue is that his glove is not particularly proficient, and I don't know that the bat I love enough to force a spot in the lineup for him. Nolan Jones has taken over as our first baseman against right-handed pitching for Abreu recently, hitting 243 with 6 homers and 136 at-bats. Probably will see a little more of him over the second half of the season. Jordan Westberg, the third baseman, a guy that we picked in the expansion draft. I think we can build around him. Hitting 288, 21 doubles and 9 homers, 126 OPS plus, 127 WRC plus. He's not a picture-perfect third baseman. You know, do love the range. Well, I don't want to say love, but I do like the range in infield error ratings a little bit above 50, but would certainly love those both to be a little higher, and would certainly really love his arm to be stronger than it is. But he is a competent defensive third baseman, certainly a guy who could end up being a first baseman for us down the line, to perhaps take over for Abreu if we're able to find someone else who can play third. And then Kevin Made continues to have a pretty solid year, 264, 18 doubles, 8 homers, 115 OPS plus, 114 WRC plus, 2.3 WAR on the season. Happy to have the 23-year-old as part of the team. Turning to our outfielders, Loidel Chapelli, left fielder, 283 with 11 home runs, OPS plus and WRC plus both in the 130 area, and a 2.2 WAR on the season. 24-year-old certainly in the mix for a corner outfield spot for us for the next few years to come. Eloy Jimenez has been pretty productive, at least in terms of the homers. 16 homers on the year and 312 at-bats. He is hitting only 224, though, and he's only walked 25 times. So his OPS plus and his WRC pluses are both below average. He is another guy, even though he's only 29 years old, who is likely in his only year with our team, looking especially for 5 years, $8.5 million. Probably not a direction that we will go. Jose Siri, back and healthy, the center fielder, hitting just 223. Does have 6 steals for us. WAR of 0.7 on the year. Defensively is kind of why we have him, in his zone rating and defensive efficiency both indicate he's a pretty solid major league center fielder, and he hasn't made an error this year in 208 total chances. So pretty solid defensive season for Siri. And last but certainly not least, Jace Barofin, our first #1 pick ever, hitting 258 with 22 doubles and 11 home runs midway through his first season in the major leagues. As I said, I haven't looked closely at how other rookies are doing, but would think that a guy who's on pace to hit over 20 home runs probably will get at least a vote or two for Rookie of the Year. Don't think he's going to win the award, but similar to Lloydell Chappelli, I could certainly see Jace Barofin being a corner outfielder for us or a designated hitter for us for hopefully several seasons to come. And last but not least, as we get ready for the draft, I'm not going to go through everybody. I'll take a look at most of these guys, or take a look at a lot of these guys before I make a final decision, but I will show that it looks like there are 15 five-star prospects in the draft. As I mentioned, we've got the #1 pick. Nashville has the #2 pick. Of course, it's a real deep draft where even if we were picking 20th, 25th, there'd probably be a pretty interesting player dropping to us. But we're going to get our pick of the litter for whatever's that worth. So I'm going to take a very quick look at the top 15 prospects. If you've got thoughts on the direction that we should go, would love to hear them in the comments. As you know, sometimes you can influence my decision. You always give me something to think about. So without further ado, first baseman Josh Blevins. Wow, that is an impressive looking potential bat. The 18-year-old is durable, high intelligence and adaptability, low greed. He doesn't have a defensive position to play and can't play the outfield. You know, he's at 6'5". He's a first baseman or a DH. But if that bat completely develops or even only 80% develops, he is a very effective major league hitter. So he's certainly an interesting prospect for us to think about. Dylan Bond, the right fielder, the bat not necessarily quite as good as Blevins. Do like the high work ethic though. Guy who could play corner outfield for you at 6'7". He could certainly also play first base, but those are kind of the options for Dylan Bond. Left fielder Jim Bryant, like the high work ethic with him as well. The home run power is almost off the charts. Doesn't bring a ton to the table defensively. Another guy who's a corner outfielder or a first baseman, although he's only 6 feet tall. So in a perfect world, you'd like a first baseman to be a little taller than that. Jaheim Faggins, third baseman. Don't love the personality. Do love the durability. Love the speed and the bunting ability, the stealing and the base running. Pretty good contact, great gap power. Gonna be an extra base machine. And decent home run power as well. Probably won't go in this direction simply because of the low work ethic and low intelligence, but definitely a intriguing prospect. Shortstop Eric Fernandez, a college player out of Miami. Certainly the most well-developed prospect at this point that we've seen. Has a real high floor. His ceiling is probably not as high as some of the guys we've looked at. Low intelligence, definitely not a shortstop. Probably a third baseman or a first baseman or a corner outfielder at the major league level. Hard to imagine we'll go with him #1 overall, but certainly not the worst prospect I've ever seen. Shamar Jenneret, a left fielder. Love the contact and home run power combination. Love the high work ethic and intelligence. Pretty mediocre defensively. Not a ton of speed. Solid prospect, but again, an older player. Probably not a guy we're going to take 1 overall. Shufeng Wan, center fielder out of Taiwan. Durable college player coming out of Cornell, Ivy Leaguer. Like the outfield range, can play left, center, or right for you. Has pretty good speed and an interesting bat. We're probably going to go with somebody where we think has a higher ceiling, but Juan is not a bad prospect. The only five-star pitcher is Juan Maldonado out of Puerto Rico with a secondary citizenship in the Dominican, coming out of Troy University. Like the high leadership and work ethic, doesn't have high intelligence, but a 20-year-old, potentially well above average stuff, movement, and control if he completely develops, with a potential 3 to 4 pitch arsenal depending on what he does with that changeup. Pretty good stamina rating, excellent at holding runners, pretty interesting pitching prospect in Maldonado. Dan Mathiowetz, second baseman, another college player out of West Virginia. Don't really know what position he's going to play. I think he's a first baseman, and that's probably about it, unless he can play corner outfield. And I guess you could put him in left field, but that arm is pretty brutal. Don't think he's got enough of a bat to be a number 1 overall pick. Dylan Masonave, a third baseman, a high school prospect. Really like the contact, gap power, and home run power. Could definitely be a third baseman or a first baseman. Yeah, that outfield range is brutal. So yeah, he's a first baseman, a third baseman, or a DH, but a decent bat. Looking for a lot of money at $12 million. Probably not a direction that we are going to go. A few guys left. Looks like we're down to the last 5 of the 5-star prospects. The only catcher on the list, Walt Miller. Pretty interesting prospect, actually. Looks like he can be above average defensively and certainly an above average bat. Only 17 and a half, closer to 17 and 3/4 years old. So, not looking for a ton of money either. Pretty interesting prospect. Obviously, with Medina, we've got hopefully our catcher of the future. But Walt Miller is certainly more interesting to me than some of the other prospects we've looked at, particularly a lot of those college guys. Right fielder Edgar Ojeda, another guy who looks like he could have a pretty good bat. Don't love the high greed and the low leadership and loyalty. Not a ton of speed, not great defensively. Certainly don't think we'll be taking him number 1 overall. Center fielder Jonte Powers. This guy's interesting to me. High work ethic. Certainly looks like he could be a pretty interesting bat. Decent speed, decent range for an outfielder. Could play, probably he's a good left fielder, and you can play him at center or right if you have to. Definitely a pretty interesting prospect for the 18-year-old. Jake Ragosta, right fielder. Pretty solid batting profile, like the durability. Not optimal range at 6'6". He can probably also play first, although some of those ratings are pretty rough, even for a first baseman. And last but not least, center fielder Josh Robinson. Pretty interesting batting profile with potential 80 contact, 75 gap power, 75 home run power. Older high school player, 18 and 3/4 years old. I don't know why I'm using these fractions to refer to how many years people are old at this point, but high leadership, high work ethic, defensive outfielder, a little bit of speed, but not a particularly good base runner or bunter. But the bat is potentially really interesting. So there's definitely going to be some decisions for us to make. Definitely have probably 4 or 5 guys who, from my quick review through, really stood out to me that are the directions that I'm most likely to be going. But as I said, if you have thoughts, share them with me as soon as possible. Going to be posting this episode on Wednesday morning, and probably will be doing the draft on Wednesday night, the 24th of May. So if you hit me up with ideas during the day or the afternoon, or perhaps even the very early evening on Wednesday about which direction you think we should go, maybe you'll have a chance at influencing what I do, for whatever that's worth. So if you're still listening at this point, still watching at this point, appreciate you hanging in there with us. And we'll be back tomorrow with another episode. Until then, thanks so much for watching, and hope you have a great day.